One Piece Chapter 1066 begins its story with the Straw Hat crew questioning what Vegapunk Shaka has just told them, calling it just a theory. Shaka explained that an archaeologist in the past staked his life on it, and almost revealed the ancient kingdom's name. He also said that, at the same location, the machines seen on Egghead were discovered, and their manufacture agreed upon. This led Robin to question if he's referring to the machine being built during the Void Century, asking Shaka how much is truly known to him. Next panel shows Nami saying, "You know something about this, Robin." Shaka replies and says no doubt it's a painful memory. But 22 years ago, your home of Ohara was eradicated by a buster call. I think that happened because Ohara uncovered the details of that kingdom existence. Shaka continues to say I believe the history of the Void Century is the history of a conflict. One between an alliance of 20 nations and the Forgotten Advanced Kingdom. The victorious 20 went on to form the world government and shape history as we know it. And to ensure that the ideas of the ancient kingdom wouldn't live on. And Shaka says they erased every trace of it from history. What Shaka said left the Straw Hat shocked. With Nami saying what that's crazy. Usopp says what this is for real. Frankie says what an epic romantic tale. Sanji shoutly says hang on Vegapunk. You mean everyone who knows about this? Shaka finishes Sanji's sentence and say. Gets eliminated indeed. Usopp while having a breakdown Shaka says like I said this is just a conjecture. And asks Robin whether he's right and that discovery is why Ohara was wiped out. Shaka continues to say then wouldn't the government actions be tantamount to a confirmation? Robin replies by saying why are you asking about this? The scholars did devise a theory after all their extensive research. But wouldn't someone as high up in the government as you know about it already? Shaka replies and says I'm afraid government affiliation makes no difference. I'm kept in the dark like everybody else. And Shaka says even bringing this topic up to them would result in my immediate erasure. Robin shoutly say if that's true how could you know they were researching that kingdom? All the books and material were on Ohara and they were. Shaka replies by saying the will of Ohara lives on. And just how Robin survived Ohara, so did the knowledge of Professor Clover, Vegapunk's old friend. He elaborates that he returned to Ohara several months later to find it a burnt field, where he offered a tribute of flowers to Clover. He explains that Clover was once an adventurer obsessed with learning about the Void Century, being undeterred by his 10 imprisonments. He eventually settled in Ohara, and is the world's most famous archaeologist, drew others thirsting for knowledge to the island. Vegapunk speculates that this gathering of knowledge is what caused the island to be burned down. Vegapunk proceeds to explain that upon arriving at Ohara several months later, he saw a giant lake in the center of the island with various literature sunken at its bottom. One Piece Chapter 1066 offers a flashback here, where the younger Vegapunk is seen theorizing that scholars threw books into the lake to protect them from the Buster Call's flames and destruction. Shaka, in the present, explains that even if foot soldiers saw them, their value wouldn't be known, with the victory being Ohara's and Vegapunk shedding tears of joy at their win. Meanwhile, another flashback shows Robin talking to her mother, Nico Alvia, who tells her she still has something left to do while instructing her daughter to get off the island. Alvia seems to have been part of the Ohara scholars who threw the books into the lake, internally telling Robin that history is humanity's treasure. She also says that for the sake of all of their futures, referring to Robin and other children like her in the world, they won't give up. The flashback then cuts back to Robin and Jaguar D. Saul, and the latter is seen telling the former to be proud of her mother and explaining that Ohara fought against the world. One Piece Chapter 1066 then returns to the present, where Robin is seen crying before she confirms Vegapunk's theory on Ohara and what they learned. She asks where the books in the lake are now, as Vegapunk explains that he wanted to bring them to Punk Hazard, but it wasn't worth the risk of higher-ups in the government learning of it. Returning to Vegapunk's flashback several months after the Buster Call, One Piece Chapter 1066 sees the younger Vegapunk witnessing various giants going into the lake. He realizes that the giants are pulling the books out of the lake, wondering what he should do and whether the giants know of their value. Suddenly, Monkey D. Dragon arrives, greeting Vegapunk like an old friend while saying it's been a while. He even mocks his massively huge head here, suggesting the two were close, old friends. Realizing who it is, Vegapunk asks what he's doing here, to which Dragon responds by asking Vegapunk the same question while saying he was friends with Professor Clover. A shocked Vegapunk seeks confirmation, before once more monologuing about Clover's past while also sharing his disbelief in the intel regarding Clover's, plotting the world's destruction. Dragon asks Vegapunk if he's worried about the giants, reassuring him that they're not thieves and have come from Elbaf with knowledge of the literature's value. He shares that their captain is a strange man with bandages covering his whole body, which leakers have since confirmed to be Jaguar D. Sol, marking his first appearance in over 650 chapters in One Piece chapter 1066. Dragon continues, sharing that Sol essentially swore that he would protect the treasures that Oharans died to save, before sharing the concern that Vegapunk came to discard the literature. Vegapunk rejects this explanation, prompting Dragon to share his disappointment with his friends joining the world government, saying he was going to invite him to join his revolutionary army. However, Vegapunk says that he can't use his intellect and technology with the penniless revolutionary army, prompting Dragon to yield to him. Vegapunk then says that there are those within the world government and Marines who share Dragon's sentiment, telling his friend not to lose sight of his goal. However, Dragon confesses that the Ohara incident is simply too much, questioning how scholars who were merely researching the past could be eradicated so mercilessly. He resolves to create an army that can fight for the people, as Vegapunk questions how someone who can hate war like him could do such a thing. Dragon then swears to change the world and not let Clover's death and Ohara's will be in vain. One Piece chapter 1066 then sees Nami praising Dragon's passion, while Usopp questions if Shaka said Elbaf's name. Robin says she had no idea of Dragon and Clover's connection, as Frankie questions why Kuma saved them and why Vegapunk modified Kuma. Sanji, meanwhile, calls Ivankov a bastard after realizing he's a founding member of the Revolutionary Army. Shaka claims that Ohara's literature can't be found by the world government, saying he instead secretly went to Elbaf and read all the literature there. This then formed the basis of his knowledge, as well as everything he's been able to invent throughout his career. It's once again confirmed here that the Giants' leader was Sol, with Vegapunk sharing he's still alive and laying low. Robin smiles, and thanks Shaka for not letting the battles that the Oharans fought go to waste with the destruction of their knowledge. Suddenly, One Piece chapter 1066 sees the shoes the Straw Hats are wearing begin to move on their own, as Shaka apologizes for not letting them go yet but beckons them all to come see something. One Piece chapter 1066 then shifts perspective to Luffy's group, where Luffy tells Chopper that he sees no riding spot on the giant robot. Chopper guesses that it's the kind of robot that moves on its own, attempting to activate it with his voice. Luffy thinks that the robot must have a name, and the name needs to be said to get it to move, prompting he and Chopper to tell Robonosuke to move. Bonnie questions if they're kids, saying there's no way the robot will move when it suddenly explodes. The real Vegapunk is then heard asking someone to save him, calling it another failure and saying that space-time must have contorted during teleportation. Luffy questions who it is, before turning to save him, as Bonnie begins to realize who they've just met. Vegapunk then asks Luffy if he's Dragon's son, saying he knew Luffy would one day come here. He also recognizes Bonnie, telling her she's grown a lot and that he's glad to see her doing well. Luffy asks Vegapunk why he's floating, explaining that Luffy's shoes also have the capability to do so with a button and lever. Luffy, Vegapunk, and Chopper all blast into the sky, as One Piece chapter 1066 formally introduces Vegapunk, calling him the man with the best brain in the world, and reaffirming him as the leader of the Special Science Group. The issue ends with no announcement of a break next week. One Piece chapter 1066 is a very deep and informative issue, arguably one of the most of its kind. The long-awaited and highly anticipated reveal of the real Dr. Vegapunk is also very exciting, and has created a massive stir amongst the series' faithful fans. One Piece chapter 1066 is also fantastic in its unexpected character development of Nico Robin, thanks to the expansion on Ohara's destruction. Jaguar D. Sol still being alive also gives fans of Robin something to look forward to when the Straw Hats head to Elbaf, which is certain to happen given these recent events. What do you think of this chapter? Leave your answers in the comments section below. And I would really appreciate it if you press that subscribe button.